Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Wonder Why Lunch and Learn with Dr. Lisa Petty. We are going to be talking today about why the "you can have it all" motto or mantra is just wrong and what we should be doing instead to get the life that you really want in midlife. So I'm going to be welcoming Dr. Lisa in a minute. Let me first tell you who I am and what you are doing here. I am Tracy Sider, and I am the go-to exercise specialist for professionals, coaches, and businesswomen over 40 who are done with their stiff, achy, stuck behind screens bodies and are ready to get in shape, feel pain-free, and age well without the stress, sweat, strain, or time suck of typical exercise. And so a lot of the women, in my world and in my Facebook group, which is the Moving and Reshaping Club for women over 40, we are pretty successful A-type women who are really being raised and being fed the line that you can have it all. And you may be feeling a little bit burnt out at this point. So Dr. Lisa, welcome. Thank you so much for coming to talk to us about this really, really important topic. Let me hand over to you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I just love talking about this. It's a little bit of a pokey conversation to have because it's sort of counter everything that we women of a certain age have been sort of raised to believe. Our lives have been framed around this concept of you can have it all. And, we get to midlife and some of us have tried it. Some of us have had success in certain areas. Some of us feel a little bit like we let ourselves down, or we let other people down, or we let the mantra down, right? Because we don't have it all and we don't know how to get it all. And I just love talking about the value of that mantra. You can have it all. And is it something that is worth pursuing? And is there an option? Is there another way of being that perhaps isn't so prescriptive in a way that is exhausting?
Yeah. So let's start with what would you define as having it all? What do you think that encapsulates?
You know what? I would love to know what your audience thinks of that, because I think what came up in my research when I was investigating sort of what gets in the way of women taking care of their well-being was all of the social expectations on women to be a certain way, act a certain way, do certain things, these prescribed things, that we were not encouraged to really think about who we are and what we wanted to do. And did we even want some of those things that were suggested that we should pursue in our lives? And so it became very clear in my research that as with most things, everybody defines it differently.
So we'd love to hear, let us know in the comments, what does having it all mean to you? For me, it means being a fantastic wife and mother and friend and daughter, and being able to go to all the sports events and still cook a fabulous meal and be at the top of my work game. No. I can tell you for sure the cooking's not happening.
Right. Well, so you named two things, right? You named sort of the social expectation on women to be wife and mother, and all of the traits that come with that: self-sacrificing, kind, nurturing, generous, giving, loving, patient, saintly. And on the other side, you mentioned an aspiration to, kick butt in your career, which it requires a whole bunch of different skills, right? You need to be self-directed and motivated, and you have to be driven and focused. And those traits, while we all have little bits of all of them, when you look at them sort of on a Venn diagram, there's you in the middle, right? And when you have these expectations to be the perfect wife and the perfect career woman, you can see challenges there, particularly for women. The lines are very blurry, right? You know, it's mom who gets the call from the school when Junior fell and hit his head, right? So mom feels guilty taking care of her child out of work hours, and then at home when she's making up for the work that she didn't do because she was at the hospital with Junior, everybody's upset because dinner's not on the table or mom's not paying attention. So there's those challenges there to sort of fit the prescribed roles for women. But there's so much more, right? Because women also have that role of being woman, which we it's been a topic of conversation. I know that you commented on my social media feed about what the expectations on women are in terms of what we look like. And it gets challenging as we get older and we start to get our body composition changes, right? We're not 27 anymore. Our bodies don't look 27. Then we start to see skin softening, maybe lines and wrinkles. And as we age, there's evidence that we're moving further away from the ideal. And so for me, that's part of the all as well.
Absolutely.
Not only the, I have a beautiful family and I have the perfect career, but I look stunning from the moment I roll out of bed in the morning till the moment I tuck myself back in again, right? I mean, I always look like a cover model. And it's expected, right? And there's a lot of shaming that goes on. You know, we hear things like, oh, hasn't she let herself go?
Yes.
And well, she really should do something about that hair. Or wouldn't she be pretty if she just lost 20 pounds? I mean, it just, right, it never ends, this ongoing pressure to look a certain way, as if that among, you know, of all the things we bring to the world, what we look like is the most important thing, right?
Absolutely.
So again, there is that expectation on women to be perfect in all aspects of our lives. And we feel it impacts our well-being, our emotional, spiritual, mental well-being, because we cannot be. We simply cannot be. And yet this idea of having it all implies that we will try. We will darn well try.
What is the history? What is the genesis of this we have it all? Is it the shoulder pads from the 80s?
Well, that's part of it.
Creep in?
That's part of it. So in the 80s, so women who came of age sort of early teens, early 20s in the 80s, there was a big book that came out called You Can Have It All in the 80s. And I think the subtitle was Sex, Love, Money, right? Like you can have it all. And I think the intention of the concept was, hey, ladies, the walls are coming down. You're no longer stuck in traditional roles if you don't want to be. You can be just like the men have always been, right? Just go out and just go do it. There you go, have it all, right? And so as you're talking about the shoulder pads, for women who showed up in the offices in the 80s, we wore the shoulder pads to show that we were there, right? We had to take up as much space as the men, because otherwise the men didn't notice us. They didn't hear our voices. We had shoulder pads and big hair, I think, so just so that we would be seen, right? And so it is part of it. And that's, I think, where this idea of you can have it all and you show up in the corporate world, which was never set up for women. It was set up for men to succeed, and all the traits that are divinely masculine, but still masculine, right? Competition, strength, logic, all of those fighting, challenging energies that men thrive in, women were then put into, and we didn't know how to function. And also, even though we all have a little bit of fight in us, we always all have logic, we all can be competitive when we need to be. It's generally, I should say, outside of our nature to be like that all the time. And we were also encouraged to lead what is innately, wonderfully female at the door. So using our emotional intelligence, using our intuition, using our ability to collaborate and cooperate and bring a different perspective to the environment, that wasn't valued either. And we're getting a little off topic, but that I think is where it started to erode for women and empowerment, because we weren't acknowledged for who we are and what strengths we do have when we showed up in the man's world in our armor.
Absolutely. And it kind of backfired, because we still had all the roles that we were doing at home, like the full-time job of the women at home plus the full-time job of the women at work. So it was like a lose-lose, I suppose.
And it hasn't changed. That's what's really frustrating. So we were the generation, Gen X, and the generation, the early generation just behind us. We were raised with traditional gender roles. We were brought up believing that our place was in the home, and that we were meant to be mothers, and this is what mothers were like, and mothers should always be available. At the same time, we were getting these new social messages that go out and have it all, darling. Just go out, just go get your career. And we had no mentors, no idea how to do it. And while women were getting this sort of mixed message of, you must be traditional, but also, hey, go get that career, nobody was talking to our young men. And nobody was, the message the men were getting is, oh, lucky you, your wife's finally going to be bringing in some money. That's not what our experience was. That was all squarely on our shoulders. But nobody thought it through and thought, well, wait a minute, if she's out doing a job, that means that when I come home from work at the end of the day, I can't expect her also to have made me a beautiful dinner, come home to a spotless home, clean children. Nobody was sort of working that through with the young men. So I think our generation probably have the highest divorce rate, because we couldn't do it, and we were looking at our partners like, what is wrong with you?
Yes.
Right. So I think it was a really challenging experience for our generation to go through. And it's only even, Gen Xers, we don't complain, right? I think that's part of the problem. We're just like, oh, okay, this is our lot in life. We'll carry it. But I think when we get to midlife, our shoulders are tired now, right? And I think on top of all of the social expectations about having it all / doing it all, now we get into perimenopause and menopause and aging. And our wisdom starts to kick up, because we were able to live on autopilot all this time, because of course we can do it, we can manage. Nobody said we would be happy or get enough sleep, but we've been able to do it until we sort of hit the wall. And now I think we get to midlife when we start questioning, what do I want? Do I want to continue on this path? Is there something else for me? And boy, would I ever like to feel good again.
Right. Yeah.
Which is your, where women come to you is like, oh my gosh, I don't feel good.
Yeah, absolutely. So what can we do instead of this have it all mantra?
So I think, first of all, let's just say that some of the generations, the younger generations now, I think they're going to have a different experience, right? Because they've looked at us and said, that's insane. What our mothers did was crazy making. It's no wonder that things went missing and things got dropped, right? So I think that the very young generation is going to be okay. I think our generation needs to acknowledge that the expectations are ridiculous. And we need to let go of the things that aren't important to us and pursue the things that are. The challenge is that for a generation of women who were never asked, what do you want? We were just told, go out and have it all. Good luck to you, honey bun. We weren't asked. We don't know what we want. I think of that Julia Roberts movie, the Runaway Bride, and every man that she's with, she has eggs a different way. because she'll eat her eggs however he serves them. However he likes them, that's how she eats her eggs, because she has no sense of what she likes.
Yeah. So let us know in the comments, do you know what you want?
Yes, good question. Do you know what you want? And, you know, we could even go backwards from that, because at midlife, there's this opening up, right? Your children are, if you had children, they're older, they're either leaving home or they're so much more independent than they were. Your first career might have fizzled out, especially in the last couple of years, all the economic upheaval, careers abruptly ended. Marriages might have ended. You could be widowed at this point in your life. And so different roles and responsibilities are ending. And lots of women are also starting to question, well, who am I then? Who am I if I'm not a mother full time? Who am I if I'm not a dental hygienist? Then I always use that example, and I don't know why. So who am I if I don't do that thing I went to school and trained to do? Who am I if I'm not married to that person? So I think a lot of things come up at perimenopause, menopause, midlife, and that sense of who am I? So I'd love to know the listeners who are watching us right now. Have you started to ask that question of yourself? Who am I now? Because I think that is pretty common as well.
Mm-hmm. And do you have any tips for how people can go about answering that question?
The who am I question?
Yeah.
Definitely. I think it's really important to give yourself time and space to be, right? And to, you know, I talked a little bit earlier about how women were encouraged to leave our wisdom at the door when we got to work. I'm sure most women have heard someone has said to them along their lifeline, stop being so emotional. You have to be logical. And because we've been discouraged from using our emotions and our intuition, we've lost connection with our bodies. And I'm sure that you see this as well in the work that you do, that the messages don't get from the brain to the body part because there's blockages in there. Well, the same thing happens with emotions. Mm-hmm. And thoughts and experiences. They get, if we don't deal with them and let them out and learn from them, they get trapped in the body. So it's really important to, I think, get to that step and understand what your body is telling you in a physical way, which is your work, but also, well, why are you feeling that pain in your knees beyond the physical blockages that might be there? Sort of what happens, what makes you get to that place? Or, you know, we hear a lot, again, we've been discouraged from using our intuition, but we all have it. We all know that we have it. We all have experience ignoring it, mm-hmm. right? It's built right into our language. I knew it in my gut. Yeah. I felt it in my heart. And physiologically, we know now that the information passing from your brain to your heart and gut, it actually starts in the low, right? So when information comes into your body, it actually starts in your gut or your heart and then goes to your brain for analysis. So you do get a gut feeling about something. Your heart has memory cells. Your heart learns. And your heart interprets and sends information to your brain, which then sort of is meant to do the pro-con. Okay, here's the decision we're going to make. But we have shut down that wisdom. We've shut down our gut instinct. We've shut down our heart knowing, and we rely on our brains to do everything. So I think that the first step is to become aware of what your body is trying to tell you. And when you ask the question, who am I now? What does that feel like in your body? And if you've never done anything like that, this is going to sound really woohoo, but it's really important that we get to know our bodies again, get to tune into our intuitive knowing. Yes, we all have blockages. We're not going to be able to always figure it out all by ourselves, but it is sort of on us to get the ball rolling, right? We need to start understanding when we have ignored our gut instinct, when we have listened to it. What does it feel like when I get an intuitive hit and I follow it? right? Those kinds of things. Because once we can, as women, reconnect with our bodies and our body wisdom again and get out of our heads, then we can start to know when we have questions about who I am, we feel the answer in the body. And so when it comes to even making decisions about what's next for me, once you understand how your intuitive knowing works and your wisdom works, it's easier to figure out some of these other big questions.
And that part of getting unstuck from the kind of social programming that's associated with having that?
So that's really interesting, the social programming, because it is so entwined in our being that when you start to question it, you don't believe how deep it goes. And so as an example of this, recently, there was a magazine cover with a famous woman on the cover, swimsuit edition, and beautiful woman, powerful woman, intelligent woman, accomplished woman, who allowed her photo to be so photoshopped that 40 years were shaved off her being, right? And so I made the comment that I think we missed an opportunity. I think we missed an opportunity as aging women to show up and say, here I am in all my glory with evidence of life on my body. And because I chose to question the value of appearance and question the value of looks, I received some pretty harsh criticism.
Really?
Really?
And if you're wondering what Lisa is talking about, you can go to Lisa's Facebook page, or I have shared the post in the Moving and Reshaping Club Facebook group. Lisa wrote a beautiful, beautiful response to that Sports Illustrated cover with the MS. We'll put her initials there.
Yes.
What kind of criticism did you get?
So some of it was, I couldn't tell if people were intentionally misreading the post because they had their own agenda, right? Because that does happen. But it was very clear from what I wrote that I was not talking about the woman, and I was not talking about, I was not bashing her. I didn't even speak of her accomplishments because we all know what they are. And she's got a bit of a rough past too, like we all do, right? And my issue was that she's a beautiful woman with much to be proud of in her life. And yet she has, I'm guessing, again, I didn't have a conversation with her, bought into the delusion that it's more important how she looks, not what she's accomplished. And in putting herself out into the world in an inauthentic way, she was allowing that pressure on women to look a certain way to continue.
And to perpetuate it, absolutely. Yeah.
So I got pushback from people saying that it was an empowering thing that she did, and that, you know, women at her age on the cover, and wasn't she brave? And so I would come back with, well, why is it brave to wear a bathing suit? Like, it was just really interesting, the level of commitment that people had to the value of her appearance. And there was no way to get people to even question it, despite the fact that thousands of research studies show that social media, advertising, Photoshop, the modeling industry, the fashion industry, all negatively impact women's body image, self-esteem, encourage body dysmorphia and eating disorders. Despite the fact that thousands of studies show this, people were offended that I questioned the photo. It was so, I'm still a little bit in shock, actually. And I got to a place where I stopped responding to comments because I just realized that people had entrenched opinions, right? And and there was no allowing to unplug Can we just question this a
Yes.
little bit?
For me, it's like, you know, growing up in the 80s, being a teenager in the 80s, it was like that whole supermodel squad
Yes.
made me feel less than and unworthy, and, you know, that I couldn't really show up in the world because how could I possibly compare, right? And that was the pinnacle. And now this is happening again.
Right,
when I'm
right.
in my 50s.
So we're thinking, you know, we get to our 50s and we're like, oh, at least we don't have that pressure to
Take
look
my
like
bra
that.
off now.
Right? I can relax, I can be comfortable, I can let the gray come in because nobody's judging me for that anymore. And now we're saying, oh no, sweetie, even into your 80s, you gotta, you know, you gotta show up a certain way. And had she shown up in her bathing suit, she's beautiful. Had she shown up in her bathing suit and allowed her being to be represented, I would have probably been in tears of joy, to be honest with you. But it felt so inauthentic to me. And she's admitted that she uses injectables and fillers, and she said that she better look good in the pictures and all of that kind of thing. And of course, we always want to look attractive. And I'm not saying we don't want to look attractive. So I'm just making it clear. Of course, we want to look our best, right? We all want to look our best. And, you know, I have lipstick on and some blush today because I know that when you do video, if you don't do these things, you're whitewashed and nobody can see you and all of that kind of thing. I understand that, but it's not about that. It was about how much it was a distortion of her reality. And yes, she had every right to do it, and that's not the point, right? So I just want to make that clear. So that's just one example to me of how ingrained these this social programming is, so much so that when we question it, it shakes us to our very core. So it is not for the faint of heart to see how we have been framed by other people's expectations of us.
Right. And midlife can really be an opportunity to, I mean, there's no escaping it, right? They don't call it the change for nothing. Things are going to change whether you want them to or not.
Right.
But I really do believe, and this is the message that I try to bring across in the reshape method, where it's about shaping, resculpting actually our skeletons, the way our bodies move, so that we can move beautifully, right? It's not just a bikini ready or even a bikini ready type of approach. I know some people do get stuck on the word reshaping. It's because we physically actually reshaping our posture and alignment so that you don't have aches and pains, so that you are able to build these functionally amazing muscles that help you like age audaciously and strong and anti-frail. That's what we're all about.
Exactly. So you get to midlife, right? And your body is changing. You cannot deny that your body is changing. And so you have a choice, right? You have a choice, as you just said, to become frail or to live into your 80s like certain swimsuit models and be strong and fit. And by the way, I complimented her strength and fitness, so it wasn't about that. But to be strong and fit. And I think long term, you know, when you're in your 50s and you're looking toward your 80s and beyond, you're thinking, like, let's be real, toileting yourself, doing up your own buttons, you know, being able to lift something out of the cupboard. These are really important things. But if we don't start working on them now, you know, in our well, it's never too late, but earlier is always better, right? But 50s, if you're in that place and you're like, oh, you know, most women go through a body composition change at midlife, right? So I weigh a little bit more than I did my entire life, but my body shape has completely changed. And so I am very aware that I need to be upping my muscle building, right? In order to age proactively, which is how I like to term it, right? So it's really important. But you know, getting back to this idea of having it all, we want to age proactively, but we also want our mental and spiritual development to be proactive as well. Yes. And so we get the change at midlife, it is a period of transition once we come to midlife, right? Everything has the potential to change, but you have to do it yourself, right? If you have to take responsibility for your choices and changes, and if something is making you feel uncomfortable now physically, you want to change that. But if something mentally, emotionally, or spiritually is making you feel uncomfortable, again, you have an opportunity to change it. But you have to be willing to look at, what am I doing? What have I done incorrectly? What can I continue doing that's working? What do I need to change? And ultimately, we need to understand what our goal is, our long-term goal. And, I call that finding your North Star. Once you understand what it is, how you want to be, how you want to feel, because ultimately, whatever goal you have is not the goal. It's not you want $1 million to have $1 million. You want $1 million because then you will feel secure. You will feel comfortable. You will feel luxurious, whatever it is. It's all about the feeling. It's not about attaining the goal. So if we have a goal, we move one step further. Well, what will that make me feel? How will that make me feel? That's the ultimate goal, right? And once you understand what your ultimate feeling goal is, it makes every other choice so much easier. If I make choice A, does that allow me to feel how I want to feel or not?
Mm-hmm.
So it's really, like the work that you do. Do I want to feel in pain or not? Right?
Right.
So not just physically pain, but as I said, emotional and spiritual pain. Do I want to feel pain, or do I want to feel what? Peace, joy, purpose? Again, that's one of those questions maybe we could ask who's listening. What is your feeling goal? What is it that you strive when you're doing your self-care, when you're doing your planning for a day, when you're planning a vacation, when you're thinking about a career? What is the feeling goal that you have? How do you want to be? I think you've muted.
Oh, goodness. We have a comment here. I love this, because this is, I'm sure, I was wondering if somebody was going to comment this, because this is certainly something that I felt some years ago when I first, sort of came to a realization that, some choices need to be made, all right? Mm-hmm. I think that's what you have it all comes down to, that you actually, well, you can't have it all. You're going to run yourself ragged, and that you got to make some choices. So we have a comment here. I don't want to ask the question because the only answer that comes to mind is nothing, because I struggle with all or nothing thinking. If I'm not everything, surely I'm not nothing, but no idea how to figure it out.
So the question, I think, is how do I unpack the all or nothing thinking? Because it's not that you're afraid to ask the question. You actually need to unravel the thinking error. It's an error in thinking. So it's a cognitive distortion that's very, very common. Actually, it's one of the things that I talk about in my program, is how some of our thinking can trap us into habits and thought patterns. Because when our brain is running the show, it sort of has, my mom used to say, 8-track mind. I don't know if I'm dating myself or if listeners understand what that means, but you just play the same tape over and over and over again, unless you consciously look for different information, right? So it's really important to understand where that error in thinking came from. And if you can't do that, one thing that you can do is go back in your life and look for evidence of where it wasn't true. Where wasn't it true that you were always or never, or all or nothing? So a good example is, we hear all the time women saying, oh, my husband never does the dishes. Something along that line. Is that true? Has he never done the dishes? Or was there that one time? that you went away for a week and you came home and the dishes were done, right? So look for evidence that your belief is incorrect. And then look for more evidence that your belief is incorrect. So sometimes it's difficult to catch ourselves in the moment, having errors in thinking, but we can look for evidence in the past where we were wrong. And then the next step is to catch ourselves in the moment, having that error and thinking, oh, this isn't going to work for me because, and then go, wait a second, when has it worked for me? Right? So it is a process. As I said, this work is not for the faint of heart. You have to be willing to let go of some of those security beliefs. Again, the social programming that has framed and taken away a lot of pressure on you to make decisions on a regular basis. Let's be real. I mean, even this concept of having it all, you really didn't have to think about it because you were told you're gonna get married, you're gonna have children. And even for the women who didn't get married and didn't have children, you were very aware that that was what was expected of you. And whether it was by choice or not by choice, there was that pressure there, right? And there a lot of that sort of I'm seeing sort of like boards where we live within the boards and there's so many decisions we don't have to make because they're programmed for us. And so it's really important just to become aware of, you know, and one way again is tuning into your body. If you're making a decision because that's the way you've always done it, tune into your body. Well, does that feel good? Is this an opportunity to make a different choice? Right.
And does journaling help as well?
Oh my gosh, it's my favorite
all
thing.
those thoughts down and out of you, right?
Yeah.
Because I think the other thing is, like, as you said, like, so much has kind of been taken out of control. We haven't had to make these choices because we've just done everything, right? We've never made a conscious choice to let something drop because there's a consequence to that, right?
Yes.
But there's also a consequence to not doing anything. Like I always say to my kids, there are 3 choices: yes, no, and maybe, right? Not doing anything, just sticking in the gray zone of not doing anything, comes with its own set of consequences.
Yes.
But there's also fear to making a definitive choice to go after one thing because that means you forgo another thing. And it's like, am I prepared to live with the consequences of that decision? I think that for me is a place that sometimes I can get a bit stuck, much better at it.
Yes. Well, I think when you get older too, you realize you're going to survive it, right? You know, when you're younger and you have an opportunity to speak on a stage, for example, and you have this terrible fear that you're going to stand out on the stage and suddenly your mind is going to go blank and you're going to forget what you were going to say and everybody's going to be staring at you. And then it happens and you're like, oh, that was terrible, but I survived.
Yeah.
Right. Or you trip in front of a crowd or you know, I mean, things happen all the time and we survive, you know, and I think that's an important wisdom that comes at midlife. Is like, oh my gosh, can you believe how much time I used to sit and worry about that one thing? Right. And then that one thing happened and you were like, oh my gosh, that was so nothing. That was why did I spend so much time agonizing about that one thing that happened? So yes, we do have choices. All of our choices have consequences, even the choice to do nothing. And you can just look at your life as it currently is to understand what the consequence of doing nothing would be in a lot of cases, right? So if you're essentially happy, then doing nothing might be the right answer at this moment in time. If you're unhappy, in pain, feeling purposeless, sad, that's another thing that happens at midlife too. We mourn the life that is beyond, you know, in our rear view mirror. And that's a really healthy response too. And this is another challenge. Women are told all the time, oh, be happy, be positive, be nurturing, you know, don't be a Debbie Downer. Well, you're allowed to mourn parts of your life ending 100%. And there's wisdom in there because then you get to say, well, what am I really sad about? Right. And what can I do to not be sad about this? And I don't mean rush through it, but when part of my own kickstart into what am I going to do at the next part of my life was when my son started looking at university brochures, right? My daughter had already left years before, but I didn't have to go through anything traumatic because I still had my child at home. He's 7 years younger. Well, when he started doing that, the little brat, and I knew that my house is going to be empty, I thought, oh, okay, this is going to change my life tremendously. What am I going to do now to not spin out of control, to not get lost in the experience, to realize this is the goal. The goal is to raise a child so that they can be independent and leave home, right? I've done my job. But you need to take a moment and go into those feelings and really get the lesson from them. And I think that's another thing that women have skimmed over too much.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So how do we overcome the obstacles that we're going to face on this journey to figuring out what we want and then going after it? Because the people around us maybe are like, who are you?
Right. Right. Well, if someone says, hey, who are you? Say, oh, I'm fine. I'm figuring that out.
Yes.
Right. That's a great way to answer that one. So no matter what change you're trying to make in your life, even working with someone like you, I'm sure that women who come to, and I don't know if you work with men, but when women come to you, they might say, my husband is giving me a hard time. He gets upset that I want to go for a walk after dinner, and I've invited him to come, but he doesn't want to go. And then I feel badly, and then I feel guilty. And then, all of these things, or, my kids are upset that now I'm cutting this slice of pie for myself to do this thing.
Yeah.
And the problem,
do get that. Yes, for sure. Because people aren't used to us as mothers actually taking time for ourselves.
Right. And so what happens to them has nothing to do with you, right? What's happening is they're realizing, oh, if she's changing, what does that mean for me? And so if a woman has decided that she wants to get fit, her partner might be thinking, well, when you're all slim and sexy and feel good about yourself, where does that leave me? You're not going to find me attractive anymore if you're all awesome. And then you're going to leave me. And then, that could be part of what's going on in a partner's head, but it could also be, well, crap, if you do that and you're successful, then I have no excuse for not doing it for myself. So again, it has nothing to do with you. And it's a reflection of what's going on inside of them, their insecurities, their own path. And your choice is a catalyst for them. And again, they get to then make a choice, right? So, the thing that women have to practice doing is just being firm in their belief that what they're doing is the best thing for them. And if they're doing the best thing for themselves, then that is the best thing for everybody else, because you are being then an example of, taking responsibility for your own health and well-being and whatever else, your career, your relationship, whatever it is. If you're making sure that you're good, then that's the best thing you can do.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Well, this has been such an important conversation. Thank you so much for coming to talk to us. How can people get hold of you? How can people work with you? And what do you offer?
Oh, thank you so much for asking. I have a free Facebook group called Midlife Alchemy. So very easy to find from here, if you would like to join us there. I also have recently introduced a $7 membership. So it's a monthly membership for women. We didn't talk about journaling. We started there and then we went off track. Some of the self-reflection is really helpful when you're journaling through meditation. And I understand that women are really busy. So I created this program where there's short, put downable exercises, meditations, lessons to help women start to ask the right questions so that they can get the answers that they're looking for and understand where they're plugged in to other people's expectations and where they have errors in their thinking that might be keeping them trapped. Right. So that's a $7 membership. It's called Midlife Magic, and you can get there through my website, lisapetty.com. And there's other ways we can work together too, but we'll leave that there for now.
Amazing. Well, if you have any links or guides, you are welcome to come to the post and put them down. I do have a link to Lisa's website, I think, above in the comments. Thank you so much for coming to speak to us. A really, really important conversation, because I do believe that midlife is a time that we can, if you want to, kind of reinvent yourself and find what you really want for this next phase of your life, and that it's an opportunity that is given to us, because things are going to be shaken up one way or another.
They are. So
you may as well be in control.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lisa. All the best.